Hello. So after my post yesterday, I've hatched a bit of a new plan. My original plan was, well, actually, my bigger plan is for this area right over here, but I'm applying the same kinds of principles to this area that was a pretty successful garden last year. What I did here, as you can see in this back section, I laid down a pretty thin layer of compost all along it because check out the deer tracks. They were here last night. They ate the rest of my perennial kale. Anyway, I laid down a thin layer of compost here because it seemed like this section of the garden was fairly deficient. I wasn't too happy with how things grew back here, so I laid down compost and then I started laying down leaves. Boy, it's hard to make out all the layers. Laid down leaves. Then over here I laid down more compost and so far a thin layer of wood chips on top, though those are more like a note to self that this section is done and they need wood chips. I have this load here, which I originally thought would be enough to cover this garden, but I don't think it is. I think I'm going to need another load dropped off over here. Luckily, I live on a pretty busy road, which for a lot of reasons I dislike, but, well, it was pretty easy for me to get all these wood chips and all the leaves you can see way in the back there. Anyway, so here's a section that's finished other than needing more wood chips. It has compost, then a thick layer of leaves, which I matted down and wetted down. Wetting it down was mostly just to keep it in place, but also, I know with sheet mulching they say to wet down the cardboard, so I figured the same principle applies to leaves if you're using leaves instead of cardboard. I think it's a thick enough layer of leaves that it will smother the weeds well enough. And the weeds weren't too bad in this section anyway. Had a bit of crabgrass here in with the tomatoes and herbs and whatever else I had there. Doesn't really matter right now. So yeah, there's that plan. Yesterday I worked on this section with more by the book sheet mulching with cardboard. And actually, I think I wrote that it was a 20 foot by 20 foot section, but it's more like a 20 foot by 8 foot section. And that's all the cardboard I saved from about a year. So, I don't know, I've given up on that method when I have so many leaves. I have 10 to 15 trailerfuls of leaves to process, and this seems like a great way to use them as long as I can get them thick enough. I think it'll work just as well as cardboard, at least for the first year, especially if I put a, I don't know, 8 to 12 foot layer of wood chips down like I did in this garden here. I didn't do anything other than lay wood chips here because it did pretty well last year, and I don't know, I needed somewhere for them to dump the wood chips and I wasn't really ready for them, so I just had them dump them on the garden, and I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Lots of experiments with, I wouldn't say laziness, but just me trying to manage my time as best as I can. So, anyway, the new plan for this area, which is a huge area, 30 foot by 70 foot was my estimate, and that's just by walking it and counting my footsteps, but I think that's good enough. I'm going to spread this compost pile as much as I can around this area. It's not quite finished, but I think it's finished enough. And then when this one finishes, I'm going to spread this one in this area, and that way I won't have to buy compost. I was thinking originally that I needed to lay it down about 1 inch or even 2 inches thick, but I really don't think that's the case. I think just something like this thin layer of compost, which I started laying down, is gonna be enough because the soil here is healthy. All I did this year with it was mow it a little bit, and there's already some clover in it in various sections. So yeah, I'll lay the compost down here, and then the guy who's been bringing me all these leaves, I'll just have him lay them down on this path right next to the garden, and maybe one or two right in the middle if I can get the compost down in time. And then I'll spread them out really thick and wet them down, or hopefully there will be another nice rain. I really should have done this before the rain that came last night. It was super heavy. And then I'll put another sign up by the road asking for wood chips and go from there. We'll see how it goes. Might as well continue with a little tour of the area. I have some mini hugelkulturs right here. There's a tree. It was just right over here, right next to the porch, way in the back there. It was maybe, let me think, 20 to 30 feet tall, and I was just worried about it being so close to the house. The electrical pole right there, it was a white pine tree. It was actually starting to get tangled up in the electrical line there over the winter when there was snow on it that bent it down into the electrical line, and that worried me, so I cut it down, and then I cut it in half and put one section just underground right here, and dug a little swale right in front of it and piled the soil on top of the log and threw some clover into the soil. Same deal over here. These are all on contour as well as I could manage it, and I actually used put a long board in that swale and put a level on top of it to get the swale level, and I don't know, it's done well this year at growing weeds. At least I've pretty much just put clover in there and let it run wild. I planted a couple things in it. Like, I think, what is that right there? Is that I can't remember. Is that yarrow, however you pronounce it? I don't know. Planted some of that in there, and there was some bergamot, but none of that did super well. I planted it too late, and I don't know. I'm not used to talking like this on video. So I suppose I'll be done and get to work. All right.